Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Between the Lines with Chris Curran. I'm your host, and tonight we speak with wife, mother, autism advocate. She raises awareness about autism, GLP, and severe feeding delay. She brings awareness, acceptance, and education through her own lived experiences, helping others feel seen, supported, and never alone. Ladies and gentlemen, KJ. How's it
Thank
going?
you. Good. How are you?
Everything's good. Can't complain. I know we've kind of talked about that,
Yeah.
like my son Coco is asleep, so it makes it a little bit easier.
Yep.
It's tough coordinating the schedule sometimes, you know?
No, yeah, I get that. It's definitely same with my husband since he's the one that's working right now while I hold it down at home and all the therapies. Everything we do has to run by his schedule because he's a sales manager too. So he has a team and his schedule's crazy. So I'm always like, got this appointment, have this going on. What's up? You good?
Yeah, sales manager too. It's production based, so it's like it never sometimes it doesn't really feel like a routine because you're always go go go.
Yeah, no, this is very true. And he's like in the field sales. So it's like business to business, door to door sales. So he's constantly on the go with his team, out and about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good for
Yeah.
him. Does he enjoy
He
it?
does. He loves it. Yeah. Actually, I was in
Yeah,
sales too until I stopped working. Well, I got laid off and then I decided I wasn't going to go back to work after my son got diagnosed. So,
yeah. That'll change. That'll change a couple things, depending on how involved you are, which you are. One thing I absolutely love is how involved you are, how knowledgeable you are. All of your posts are very educational, and I relate to them so much.
yay, good. That makes me happy. And that's the
Yes.
purpose because I almost didn't start this account because there are so many accounts already and so many moms that have, hundreds of thousands of followers. And I'm like, what can I bring that's not already out there? You know what I mean? What am I going to say that someone hasn't already
Yeah.
said? And so I almost didn't start this, but I was encouraged by my husband and some friends and other mothers that I've met that I've helped, and their kids are older than mine. And they're like, how did you do this? And how did you do that? And I was kind of taken back by that. I was like, you didn't know about that? Like, no one told you about that resource? Or that's wild to me. Like, you know, we have the same regional center, but case coordinators vary, right? And what they decide to tell parents really is detrimental to their child. And so I was just, I guess, really blessed and fortunate to get amazing coordinators that I was able to get all this information. And so when I realized, wow, some of these moms have been walking this journey for a couple years with no support, I was like, oh my gosh, let me help you, let me help you.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of how this started. And I'm naturally just a researcher by heart. So I just needed to know. I'm like
Yeah.
all in or all out, and how can it be like, I have to be all in? It's my
Yeah.
son, right? So I'm like, give it to me. I need to know everything. Still learn.
Yeah, when you're that go-getter, no, and I say this all the time, my son's about to be 5.
Yeah.
I've never been the parent of a 5-year-old. I've never been the parent of a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old. So every year you're constantly learning and staying ahead. And for you, it's the same thing, at least for a child that's on the spectrum. That next age, what they typically tend to unlock, what might be what they unlock for you is different than what they unlock for me. So it's good to be able to share your journey, but I love the fact that you share the resource side, not just your perspective of a parent of your child on the spectrum, because it all
Hmm.
varies. But when you talk about the different resources and things that are provided. Hey, you don't know about the handicap placard? You can get these. This is how you get them. When you go about that kind of business in your post, it's amazing because those are some of the small things that sometimes people overlook, or two, they might be a little bit overwhelmed or intimidated by it, so they'll back off of it. And your reminder's like, hey, don't forget about
Yeah,
this.
exactly. Your child is entitled to that support because it's needed. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, children are getting hit by cars far too often because they're eloping and, they're fast. It's
Mm-hmm.
not the parents' fault. The children, they're extremely fast. autistic children have like superpower strength and they run so quick. And even my toddler, like one day we were at feeding therapy and he almost like outran me. And I was like, you got these little tiny legs. Like, how are you so fast? And I'm like, hold on. Like they are quick.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, people feel like
Yeah.
they feel bad or they feel like not worthy, because they don't have a visible disability, and that's not true. Your child needs that support. You need to be safe. You need to feel
Yeah.
safe. And people don't
Yeah.
go out, because they don't feel safe with their autistic children. And if there's one little tiny support that can be given with parking closer because your child, tends to get away easily, then yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you need that. That's what they're for. It's for people who need that ability, just that little bit, just to maybe avoid a situation in the parking lot,
Exactly.
to get to the store a little bit quicker, to get back to the car a little bit quicker. Yeah. I mean, we're everyone constantly has to worry about that because you just never know. At the drop of a dime, they can just take
Yeah,
off.
even like you said, you mentioned a good point, even coming back, right? So obviously, we know children on the spectrum, they struggle with routine and when they want something. And like most of children, they don't want, if they're not ready to leave, they're not going to be happy about leaving, especially when they're on the younger side and they don't understand, like, hey, we have to go.
Hmm.
And they're throwing a tantrum trying to run back into wherever you're trying to leave from. And so it's equally important not just arriving, but departing as well. Maybe even more so,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, the yeah, exactly. Because yeah, transitions can be a big thing. Coco's he's gotten a lot better with the transitions. We tend to give him a heads up, like, hey, in 2 minutes we're gonna do this. 2 minutes, and Kayla's really good about showing him pictures on his AAC to say, hey, we are gonna go to Target. Hey, we're gonna go home. We're gonna go to Nana's. Whatever it is, just giving him the heads up definitely helps out. But as you're walking out that store, you're probably now pushing a cart that has things in it. So your attention might be somewhat diverted to the side. So having that nearby spot's very
Yeah,
helpful.
definitely.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, I was born and raised in California, Orange County, but not the OC you see on TV. People think like Orange County, California, the beach. No, 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 no. I grew up in the not so nice area of Orange County, and it does exist. There is a bad part of Orange County. People are like, there's no hood in OC. Trust me, there is, because I grew up there.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I grew up with just my brother, and my mom, single mom, and pretty poor. She didn't have help, and didn't have a car for years. And we took the bus everywhere. And speaking of like Christmas time, it just reminded me, um, we went to go walk to get a Christmas tree one year. And we walked like a good like 2 miles with our Christmas tree back because my mom didn't have a car. Like, and that was a good time. But yeah, I grew up, you know, not as fortunate as others, and so that's why I think, like, I'd want to, be so giving and helpful and resourceful for people because people did that for my mom and for my family when I was growing up. So, I
Hmm.
I don't know, I don't know, like, any other way to be than to, show grace and be helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's similar on my side. Not exactly growing up with everything, but we had good people in our
Mhm.
lives. I was fortunate to have both my parents, three older brothers, and it was good because you get to see your family work hard towards the goals of what they want, and sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. But it teaches you that level of empathy, determination, hard work, drive, the fact that you have to go out and get some of the things that you want in life. And
Yes.
um, those are just some values that you end up having, and then they transition into parenthood as well, of like, no, we have to do this, we have to figure this out.
Yeah. You get grit.
That
Right.
yeah, and it's very crucial.
Mhm.
It
Yeah, that's
is.
why.
Uh,
I work for everything I have, and yeah, I don't know any other way. Like, it's not handed to you. Like you said, you gotta go out there and you gotta get it. Yeah, you'll have people help you along the way, of course, but ultimately, it's up to you. And yeah, it instills something different in you when you grow up on the, poorer side. There's no other way to say it. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, absolutely. And let me ask you this too. Like, what led to the diagnosis? Did you guys see certain signs, or how was the process, and how did you guys receive the diagnosis?
All right. That's a loaded question because, yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. And another reason why I kind of thought it
Yes.
was important to share my story because things are changing now. Obviously, there's so much out there, and I don't want to be like controversial at all whatsoever. Because, like, to me personally, the way I like look at autism and the diagnosis side and, like, the causes, right? It's multifactorial, and if a mom tells me that she thinks this caused her child's autism, like, I'm gonna believe her because mother's intuition is, like, just can't compare it, and I'm not gonna argue with another mom about what she feels caused her child's autism because I'm not the expert in her child, I'm the expert in my child, and, there
Mm-hmm.
are so many different factors that can go into what causes autism, right? And so here we have my son that pregnancy was pretty good up until it wasn't, until I was about like 34 weeks. And then they told me I had something called IUGR, which is intrauterine growth restriction. Basically, my like placenta and like uterus or whatever wasn't giving the baby all the nutrients. And so they were like, it's kind of mild. It's not super concerning, but we're going to keep an eye on you. And then around 38 weeks, you'll probably be induced. So I was like, okay. They're like, he's probably going to be on the smaller side, like about 5 pounds. So he's born, fast forward, he's born. He has a double nuchal cord, which is the umbilical cord's wrapped around his neck twice, pretty tight. Thank God he was breathing. Yeah. But when he came out, I felt like he was pretty like purple. Like I felt like he looked very purple compared to my other children. This is now my fourth baby I'm delivering. So I'm like, okay, but the color came quick, right? He turned pink pretty quick. So they're like, oh, he doesn't need oxygen. Like it's all good. I'm like, okay. So he's born, he's underweight. He was born 5 pounds, 12 ounces. So they're like, yeah, he's in about the fourth or fifth percentile for weight. And that can come with, having an underweight baby can come with, developmental delays and other things, but he seems and appears healthy, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. Everything was fine. And then around 2 weeks, I started noticing he was like almost like spitting up a lot, like refluxing, but I didn't have reflux with my other kids. So that was something new. So I'm like, is this what reflux looks like? Okay, maybe he has reflux. So I took him to the doctor. And I had to go to the doctor about 6 times, 2 emergency room visits because it was getting, like, kinda profusely, like, just, like it wasn't, like, projectile, but it was just enough to be, like, everything he was eating was coming up? And then he started getting yeah, it was I'm like, "What's going on? Something's not right." And he looked a little jaundiced to me too. And so I took him in and they're like, they use that little scanner, right, to measure the belly region or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well, no,
Mm-hmm.
he's not jaundiced. Like he looks fine. He's under any type of remedy situation. So you're good to go. You don't need any light therapy. I'm like, okay. So then he started having a little bit of blood in his stool. And I'm like, something is not right. Like something feels off. I don't think if it's reflux, it's something added on with reflux. Something is going on with my baby. And no one, everyone's just kind of disregarding it, right? Like, oh, you're postpartum, you're tired, you're just worrying. It's your baby's fine. Like it's just reflux. Change the formula, stop nursing. Whatever you're eating is causing him to have reflux, because I was tried to exclusively nurse, but because of all his issues, I was doing like half and half. And then they're like, okay, stop nursing, right? So I'm like, all right. So then he, I go to the doctor. I ended up going to the emergency room again, finally, like demanding answers. And they're like, we're going to do one last ultrasound on his stomach and we're going to see what's going on. And there's sometimes in boys, they have like kind of like a twisted intestinal area that could be like, it happens frequently with boys, um, where their intestines get twisted, and so they did the ultrasound, and it was fine. So, again, I was sent on my merry way with, like, "Hey, your kid's fine," and, changed the formula, and I'm like, "You gotta be shitting me, like, are you like, there's blood in his
Yeah.
stool." They're like, "Well, it could be a cow's milk protein allergy, not necessarily like a lactose, but there's a protein in cow's milk that also kids can grow and they can be
Yeah.
sensitive to. So you're gonna switch to this like super like broken down formula called Nutramigen, and your son's gonna be better." Are you
Yep.
familiar?
Yeah.
So we switch over to the
Yep.
formula. He's still having problems. So then finally I am like, I'm frustrated at this point. So I go back to the doctor again, see a brand new doctor, and I had Kaiser at the time, and this is, like, his new pediatrician that I had never met, so finally, she was amazing. She looks at my son's eyes, she, like, peels his eyes back, and there's a little bit of yellow, and she said, "You know, I think you're right, there might be a little bit of bilirubin left. Let's test his blood. I'm not too concerned, but just to be safe, I'm gonna test his blood." I'm like, "Okay." So we go, do the little he's still a newborn, they just prick his finger. Um, and it's Friday. So Friday around 7 p.m., my phone rings and it's the doctor. And I'm like, that's not good. Doctors don't call you on a Friday, in a Friday night
At
at
7.
7 p.m. Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, something. And I had already like gone down the Google rabbit hole of what it could have been. And it was exactly what they thought well, he didn't have it, but there's something called biliary atresia. And biliary atresia was like all the symptoms that my son was having. And this is where my advocacy started, right? And that, uh,
Mhm.
basically what biliary atresia is where your liver, like your like your bile ducts are not connected all the way, and so your liver can't process and detox as it should. And, most children need a liver transplant by the age of 2. And this is where it's really wild too, is that my son was 7 weeks, okay, 7 weeks old. By 8 weeks old, there's a surgery that they can do in your bile ducts to repair, like, the connective tissues, I guess. I don't know, like, the medical terminology, but basically, whatever's wrong in the bile ducts, they can fix that, and it has to be done by 8 weeks of life. If it's not done by 8 weeks of life, you cannot do that. You cannot do it past 8 weeks of life for whatever reason. I'm sure they explained it to me then, but it's just way that's past my educational level. So, uh, they're like, "You're really lucky that, like, you kept on this for your son, because if he does have this and he did not get this procedure done by 8 weeks, he would, like, 90% need a liver transplant by 2 and go into liver failure." And it was, like, a really dangerous thing, so I'm like, "Oh my gosh, thank God I, like, listened to my gut and I didn't ignore that, and I didn't let them gaslight me, I knew something was going on." So we're hospitalized now for 6 days, right? And so they do all these tests. Now, here comes that was a long-winded answer, but this all has meaning, right, up to what I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
So, my son now has to take nuclear medicine, which is, radiation, a small little dose of radiation and the medication, and you have to take it for 3 days for this thing called a HIDA scan. It's basically like an MRI, but like radioactive, because they wanna see his bile ducts to see how they're flowing to possibly avoid a surgery. And so they're like, "But I don't know, for some reason, they said they couldn't where like, the timeline of surgery and where my son was at, like, and how old he was, being that we were pushing 8 weeks at that point. They're like, "We're only gonna do it for 2 days," which now looking back, I should have been like, "Well, then what's the point?" But I didn't
Yeah.
really I was sleep deprived, first of all. My son's not even 2 months old yet, and since he's been born, even prior to him being born, it's been a shit show, and I'm not sleeping. So,
Yeah.
I'm just, like, not thinking as clear as I normally would to ask as many questions, so I'm just trying to avoid surgery. I'm just like, "Yeah, I don't want general anesthesia. If you can give him this medication, and do something that's like a low risk procedure to figure out if he does need the surgery, then yeah, let's do it. Well, then here comes a consent form. Now, this consent form lists like umpteen amount of things that your child basically can inherit because of the nuclear medicine. And it was like very heavy on developmental delays. It listed so much.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't one thing it didn't list about a developmental delay. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, my son's not even 2 months, and I'm gonna sign this form," like,
Yeah.
and the nurse kept coming back in, and she's like, "We really need to start giving him the medicine because he's not even gonna have the 3 days, he's only gonna have the 2 days, so, are you ready to sign? Because, like, we're ready to give it to him." And I just couldn't sign it, and it took me, like, a good 2, 3 hours, and so I just thought to myself, and I think about this often now that my son is diagnosed, I think to myself, like, in that moment, I thought, well, I would much rather have a child that had a developmental delay from a medication than a child that passed because he's so small for surgery or liver failure,
Yeah.
right? So I signed the paper. We do the procedure, and I just had this like bad feeling in my stomach, but I wasn't like a, literal do or die, damned if I do, damned if I don't situation. So he doesn't do the nuclear medicine and doesn't do the HIDA scan, then he goes straight to surgery, right? But if he does the nuclear medicine and like it comes back and shows that he doesn't have biliary atresia, then we don't have to do surgery, right? But unfortunately,
Yeah.
it came back inconclusive. So he had to do both. And he ended up having the surgery. Yeah. He ended up having to do both. And so that was a hard pill to swallow too, because that's why I said looking back, I wish that I maybe would have said no, because he needed 3 days of that medication and he only got 2. Was that why it was inconclusive?
Yeah.
I'll never know.
A lot of parents will go through the sleep deprivation,
Yeah.
right? Of being a mom, that happens. But when you go through things with your child medically, it's a different level.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were in similar situations. Not We had similar situations go on with us with Cole, where he had a tough time. He had GERD,
Okay.
reflux. He was allergic peanuts, tree nuts, soy, and we dealt with the same thing with dairy. He was allergic to dairy, so it was, you know, all the different chop downs. Well, try this, try that. This is a little bit less than this one, so try this. And you've gone through all these different type of formulas trying to find what would work best for him if he's having blood in his stool and things along those lines, and just having a tough time eating. And then on a tough time on the back end of eating. So that's why when you said, I'm like,
Yeah, I saw your face.
yep.
I was like, "Okay, there's more to his story for sure." Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking
Yep.
about. Because GERD is scary when they're little. I never had experience that with my other 3, so when my son started, like, having, I wouldn't say it's projectile, but just, lots of basically everything he would eat kinda just come up. I'm like, "Oh my gosh," and then he would, like, kind of
Yeah.
choke on it too, which was also scary. One time I thought he stopped breathing. I even called 911 because this is before he was like maybe like a week and a half old. I'm like, it looked like he stopped breathing for a second. I got so scared. I like called 911. Then when they came, they're like, it's fine, it's fine. So I probably look like a crazy mom, but I was like, I don't know what's happening with my baby. And this is not the experience that I had with my other children, you
No.
know?
Y-
So going back to the surgery, he ended up
Yeah.
having the surgery on my husband's birthday, of all days too. It was on my husband's birthday, and we just took that as like a good luck sign. Like, okay, babe, you're gonna get the best birthday present ever, and he's gonna, come out of surgery, and they're gonna say he doesn't have it. And thankfully, that we did get that birthday present. And I mean, we didn't even make it down to the lobby in the hospital before they called us. Like, well, I'm sorry, we did make it down, but we were going to get food, and we didn't make it with our food back up to the room before they were already calling us saying, "Hey, he's good. He's good. He didn't have biliary atresia, thank God." And we're just like, "Oh my gosh," we were so happy, and
Wow.
that was like, you know, best day of my life. Next to my kids obviously being born. To hear that because as a new mom, you know, not new mom to him, obviously. I My hormones were everywhere, and I was a mess. So just to hear like, okay, thank God, like, you know, because when he's in surgery, you're thinking, okay, if he does have biliary atresia, they're gonna fix that part, but we still have a long road ahead of like, what does this mean for his liver and his day-to-day life, right? Um, so thank God he didn't have that. And then we ended up, getting discharged a couple days later. We were in the hospital for a total of 6 days, and he did have to get a biopsy of his liver. So he does have a pretty, like a good, like about like a 2-inch scar on his little abdomen area where the liver is. And we came home and he was gaining weight now, and that was part of the reason too. I forgot to mention he was also dropping weight. I mean, looking back, now that I've started this page, like I've been looking back a lot at videos and pictures and stuff, and wow, just to see how small he was. He dropped down to less than the 1 percentile. He was just so thin because his liver was not detoxing, and everything he was putting in was coming back out, right? So he was so tiny. And so they put him on this medication for your gallbladder and your liver called Actigol, and they put him on like a high vitamin, like K and D and I forgot, maybe E. There's like 3 vitamins and some other things in there. In between those 2 things, within a month, it was like it never happened. And I'm like, "Wow, this is wild." And I asked the doctor, like, "What was it? What was it then?" And it was something called neonatal cholestasis. And it happens often, no rhyme or reason sometimes. Other times there's like viruses and things that can cause it, but they me for everything. There was no viruses. It just happens. And ironically, and this is where I know God was on my side, is that the GI doctor that was treating my son, this also happened to his son. He had the same experience. So as a father and a doctor,
Wow.
he and his son had no rhyme or reason either. It just happens. And so thinking about
Yeah,
all of
that's
that.
best case in that scenario.
Yeah, it was. So I felt really confident. I was really happy with his pediatrician and his GI team that we had, at that time. And so, you know, he started growing, everything was good, and we're like, okay, cool. Like this is all like behind us. Um, and then my son just started showing like a little bit of regression, and he didn't like solid foods. So that was like the biggest indicator, you know, looking back, right? Then I didn't know exactly what was going on. I thought, "Oh, maybe he's just sensitive because his gut was, worked on when he was 7 weeks old. Like, maybe he's sensitive." Like, he also did have the cow's milk, protein allergy, so, maybe his stomach's just sensitive, and that's what doctors kept telling me. So, when I went to go feed him solids at 6 months, he didn't wanna eat. Then I tried feeding him well, I continued to feed him, right? But I'm talking about like the well baby visits, like at 6 months, I was like, hey, he's not really into food, and it seems like it bothers his stomach. Like he's gassy, he's. It just seems like it's really bothering him. Like, maybe can kids have food allergies this little, and it's only like fruits and vegetables, right? And so she's like,
Yeah.
yeah, just give him time. His your gut obviously is your second brain, right? We all know this now. But because that was worked on, his brain remembers, like, "Hey, when we put food in my mouth, like, this hurts my stomach." And so he may be more, like, reluctant to eat. And I said, "Wow, even at,
Yeah.
like, an infant's age, like, so little?" So then at 9 months and then again at 12 months, I kept every well check that we had, I kept mentioning, like, "Hey, he's not wanting to eat." And it's just like he almost is like disgusted by it. And she's like, at the 9 month visit, she's like, well, some kids might need feeding therapy. They have food aversion, so he might need feeding therapy. I'm like, okay, well, why aren't we doing it now? You know what I mean? Like, because I'm like a proactive go getter. Like, I don't like to be reactive. Let's do it now. She's like, well, they want to 9
Yeah.
months. I'm like, but I'm struggling to feed my child food. Well, he's gaining weight, though, he's not dropping weight. I'm like, "Well, yeah, because he drinks formula." So they're like, "Well, we'll see how he is at 12 months." So at 12 months, I said, "No, no, no, I'm not playing your guys' game anymore. He needs feeding therapy, like, right now. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not going to another well baby visit, and we'll talk at 18 months. Like, he needs feeding therapy, like, something's up. So that was, like, really the first, like, indicator, of autism, but we didn't know. We were so hyper focused on my son having his gut
Ye
manipulated and messed with, and the surgery and that consent form that I signed. Maybe he has a developmental delay. A global developmental delay is what I kept thinking my son had. Nowhere in my mind did I think my son had autism. And so he started saying a couple words around 12 months, and then around 18 months, no, actually around 14 months, he lost the words. And I was like, why is he not saying those words anymore? And my son's not vaccinated either, right? It's a multifactorial thing when it comes to autism. I chose not to vaccinate my son because autism does run on my husband's side of the family. And also, my son that I had prior to Mateo, he had a seizure after having a reaction to a vaccination. And yeah, full blown seizure. Doctors try to gaslight me then too. Well, it's a febrile seizure. It's a febrile seizure from the vaccination, bro. Like, what? They're like, no, it's not the vaccination. No, it was a live vaccine. And the insert says that it can cause seizures. But they're like, no, my son wasn't even sick. They're like, they just kept focusing on like it was a febrile seizure. Okay, great. Caused by the vaccine. So I went down. Yeah, exactly. What caused my son's seizure? He wasn't sick. He just got vaccinated and boom, now having a convulsion, and I'm calling 911 and he's barely 13 months old. Most terrifying thing in my life. I had never seen a seizure. Thought my son was dying. I had no idea until it clicked like, "Oh shit, he's having a seizure." Like, "What?" And then the doctors I had a debate with doctors left and right. I'm like, "But how can you tell me it's not the vaccination, like, if you don't read the inserts?" Like, they're like, "Well, we just go off of what the CDC says." So you've never actually read a full insert on these vaccinations of what they can. They're like, "Nah." I'm like, "Okay, well, that's cool. I'm not gonna be vaccinating my son anymore. I'm not. I was not gonna risk another vaccination and another seizure." I was terrified. And there was actually a doctor that I met with that gave me a exemption form back when they used to take them. They gave exemption form because he agreed and said, "Yeah, you don't know how your son's gonna react to the next live vaccination, so don't." So that was really the main reason why I did not vaccinate my children anymore was after my son had his seizure. And so when I had Mateo, knowing that my, husband's family, there is autism running in his side. We have 4 nephews with autism on my husband's side. He has a couple cousins, a couple of, like, his cousins have, like, children have grandchildren now with autism, so there are about maybe, like, 6 to 8 people on my husband's side that have autism, so I was just like, "I'm not gonna." And plus, I don't trust vaccines after the my son had a seizure, so I'm not gonna vaccinate him, right? So, leading up to, like, "Oh my gosh, why is my son autistic? What happened?" "What happened? Was it the nuclear medicine?" It couldn't have been environmental with the vaccines, but could it have been environmental with everything that he was given in the hospital? Could it have been lack of oxygen that maybe was so minimal it wasn't detected, on the fetal monitoring? Maybe maybe he got a little dip of oxygen and that caused him, his brain and DNA and everything in there to shift. And is that why he has autism, right? So there was I just hear so many other people talk about what caused their child's autism and, people saying, yes, it's vaccines. No, it's not vaccines. It's genetic. No, it's not genetic. And so here I have a child that received nuclear medicine, right? Has autism that runs in the family and not vaccinated. So people would say, "Okay, well then."
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
people would say then it's
Yeah.
genetic, right? Like, there has to be genetic. But wait, is it genetic 100%? Because why did I sign a consent form that said my son could possibly have, like, every single developmental delay, you know, possible?
Mm,
So what is the cause?
yeah. I think a lot of people I mean, it's normal that once people receive a diagnosis, they try to find out what caused it, where, why, who, how, your family, my family, this,
Yeah,
it's such a natural thing
it does.
because it's new, it's a part of your life now. And I like what you said earlier too about you don't really you don't blame or point fingers at anyone that thinks any different way because at the end of this is how I also see it too. At the end of the day, no matter what your final conclusion is to if, how, why, when autism became a part of your life, even after you solve that, you're still there.
It's not gonna change anything.
we're still there. We're still parenting. So it's like it's make your peace, know your truth, what applies to your child, your life, and that's one of the things that I love about your content too, is because you dip so much into what do we do now?
Thank you.
Like you may have gotten your diagnosis. This is what we got to do now. Are you getting services? Because you'll see it too. I mean, you'll see people will spend 5 years just talking about one thing. I've seen more on your page about educating people after the fact than so many other people on other pages that have the experience and maybe are still drawing to find out how it just
Thank
happened
you.
or why it
Yeah.
happened. But yeah, but we're all
Yeah.
here
What are we gonna
regardless of what you think it is. Like our community's our community. Find out what your purpose, your point is, and how things happen. But there are some resources out there for you now. So like when I saw you talking about placards, I was like, that's awesome. That is something that the community needs to learn more about. And that's the content that needs to be out there.
Exactly. Yeah, we can't hyper focus, and that's why I made that video of like, hey, if your child just got diagnosed with autism, watch this because I did that for a good
Mm-hmm.
period of time where I was just like, oh my gosh, what caused my son's autism? Was it this? Was it that? Was it this? And it was like, no, you know what? Like it's not gonna change anything. It's literally like whether it was a nuclear medicine, it's genetics, it was lack of oxygen that, wasn't detected on the fetal monitoring because it was so minimal, whether it was environmental, something I consumed within my, placenta that passed to him. Who knows? I have no idea. So like let's not focus on why. Let's get down to business and let's try to help my son feel safe in his body. And so that's really what I did, so when he got diagnosed, it was basically because he was having all these feeding issues. That's what led to the early diagnosis was all of those, feeding delays. And then I feel like when early intervention came in, they knew my son had autism, I think, but they can't say that, right? They're not clinicians. They can't. We all know that, they cannot
Mm-hmm.
diagnose. And so and they don't want to offend you, of course. They're not going to be like, hey, your child 100% has autism and they're, so but I could looking back now and things that
Yeah.
they would tell me and comments that they would make in a very respectful way, and I'm not saying that they would make bad comments, just the things that they would say, I think they were trying
Mm-hmm.
to, like, give me the hint that, like, "Sweetie pie,
Yeah. Like,
this is
hey.
not a global developmental delay, your son is autistic." Like, I think they knew, and I was not ready for that diagnosis. I wasn't. I didn't want the diagnosis of autism because I felt like it was that global delay. And I'm like, he's gonna be fine. He's gonna grow out of it. He has time. He had surgery. He went under general anesthesia. Like, who knows what that did to his little brain and his body. And, if this is on his record forever, what if they're wrong? He's, at this point, we're talking, my son was 2. I'm like, he's 2 years old. How are you gonna, some kids aren't talking at 2 and they're not autistic. So how are
Yeah.
you gonna, sit there and say like, yeah, your son, needs to get an evaluation for autism because he's flagging high on all of our assessments for autism. And I'm just like, no, like, and then, doctors too telling me, no, your son's not autistic. Like even there was a GI doctor that I saw and the doctor said, I'm watching your interaction with your son and how he's interacting with you, and your son is not autistic. And I wish he never would have said that. And
Mm.
it was because,
Yeah.
your son is affectionate, your son is making eye contact, your son is playful. Your son's not autistic. And so in my mind, even though we had family and we have nephews that are on the spectrum, we don't live their day-to-day life, right? And they live in Minnesota. And so we only know what we know when we see them. And so for me, ignorantly, I also thought like, yeah, he's not autistic. Like a lot of autistic kids, yeah, they're more to themselves. He's still little, but he still is like very social. He kisses me, he like hugs me. Um, he's
Yeah.
affectionate, he makes that eye contact. Like there's no way he's autistic. Just based off of that alone, which is so wild to like now fast forward 9 months, right? And be like, wow, you really thought that that's what what indicated or determined whether he was autistic or not, you know?
It's easy hindsight.
Yeah.
It's so easy to judge us in those moments. And like you, not from my perspective, but from Kayla's too, you go through so much in that time frame, right? Of having a child, and then you're going through sleep deprivation. Is he allergic to this? Why is there blood in his stool? What's going on with this? A seizure, consent forms. You throw everything in there and you blink and 2 years have gone by, and it's tough to like look back and try to grasp all of these moments. Like, I wish I would have said that. I wish I would have asked this. I wish I would have did that. It's not always that easy.
No.
It's, cause I look back on it. I try to look back on it too. I'm very involved in my son's life. And I look back at those times of when he had GERD and he was choking in the middle of the night in his bassinet. I would jump out of bed to pick him up, to burp him and try to help him out. And it's like, there's PTSD there.
Oh, 100.
I know there is. Yeah, I know there's anxiety. Like, I don't think I had anxiety before that. Now I do, because I know what it's like in that moment to always be ready for something to happen. It's like, to think about what parents in general go through once having a child, because you learn in so many ways to put yourself second, and you're caring for someone that you can't control everything.
Yeah. No, it's true. I
You know?
1000% have PTSD from that. My husband and I, we did 24-hour shifts because that time I told you my son choked. I had asked the pediatrician. I said, "Can he really choke? Like, he's obviously we all know, right? They want us to lay our babies flat. And how can I raise his bed up when he's, just a couple weeks old?" And she's like, "There's no safe way to do it." I said, "I saw like those bed risers, right?" She's like, "There's no safe way to do it. Like, truthfully, you and your husband are going to have to take shifts with your son." And I was like, so we did that. We did that for a long time. So prior to my son even
Yeah.
going to the hospital, we did 24, like, we're so crazy. We did 24-hour shifts. We would stay awake for 24, and we had 5 other children to
Yeah.
take care of. That were in sports and activities and gymnastics and dance class. And I look back at that time and yeah, it's forever changed me as a person and as a mom. And so, yeah, now you're here telling me that my son might be autistic. I'm just like, no, like, we can't take one more thing. Like, why? Like, we already went through so much. Like, now we're going to add autism to our journey. Like, and so I want to say though something, shout out to the really good regional center caseworkers because I had a really good one. I had all good ones. I've had three, so they've all been great. But the second one we had, she came to my house and she looked at me and she said, "I really think that you should get your son evaluated. I know you don't want this evaluation because you're scared, but I really think that you should get your son evaluated." And that was her way of telling me, like, "I know. I would be very surprised if your son didn't have autism," right? Those words never left her mouth, but she was pushing for me to get this evaluation just off of being around my son because this is what she does for a living, right? She's around children that have, delays and disabilities and autistic and non-autistic children all the time. She can tell the difference. And she's like, "And if your son doesn't have
Mm-hmm.
autism, great. That's the best case scenario, right?" And so that's what I'm passing along on my page. It's like, don't be afraid of that diagnosis because it's actually gonna help you and it's gonna give you clarity and you're gonna get ahead of it, right? Because I
Yes.
think to myself, the caseworker before her told me the same thing, and I told her, "No, I will not get my son evaluated until he's 4 or 5 years old." And that would have been the dumbest thing I could have done for my son. And so I'm so happy to that caseworker that kind of just, like, saw what I couldn't see and is like, "Hey, just trust me on this. Just do it, and if you change your mind, at least, you're on the wait list," right? She saw something so
Yeah.
significant that she actually got my son's evaluation signed off on, like, expedited. So I was told it would be, like, 9 months to a year on this wait list, right? As we know, the wait list to get these evaluations done is crazy. So that's why I agreed to it. I got a call 2 months later. 2 months later, "Hi, this is Doctor so and so. We got a referral for you, and we're ready to schedule your son's eval." And I'm like, "I don't know if I'm ready. Like, am I ready for this?" And I was like, "Alright, you know what? Something's clearly going on. Let's just go for it." And so we did, and my husband and I went it was, like, so fast. Like, it was, like, an hour in the room with this doctor, and I felt like and this is not to discredit her whatsoever, but in the moment, I'm just gonna share my raw feelings. In the moment, I just thought, "She barely talked to him, she barely played with him, she barely interacted with him, and now 45 minutes later, he's autistic?" You know what I mean? So she's like, "Yeah, he has autism." And I was like she's like, "I'm so sorry. No, you don't wanna hear that." And she was really empathetic. She was a great doctor. I actually referred a few people to her after. But she said, "It's hard to hear, I know, but I just have to be honest with you. He has level 2 autism, and he needs significant therapy." And she just went on to list the therapies that he needed. And I just thought, This lady is crazy. There's no way. How are you gonna tell me my son is autistic in 45 minutes, you know?" I even had a follow-up call with her after to be like, "How did you know in 45 minutes?" And she's like, "Here's the thing. You only know this version of your son, just like you said earlier. You only know this style of parenting, right? You know no different." She's like, "So I, obviously was trained to do this, but not only that, like, as a mom herself," she said, "if my son had autism, it would take someone else to tell me that because I would know no different. That's my son. That's my child. So you see Mateo as Mateo. You don't see Mateo as Mateo, autistic Mateo. I see Mateo as he's autistic. I see these things that you don't see." Um, and she just went on to describe some of the things that she witnessed in the assessment that led to him being diagnosed. And then I said, "Okay, well, I have to really now believe this myself, right?" Because I accepted it. It's not like I didn't accept it. I accepted it. But it was more so like, do I really believe that he's old enough to get this diagnosis yet? And then my husband and I struggled with that. He's only, he was,
Which is a fair question.
yeah,
It's a fair question for us parents to be like, yeah, because he was 2 years, 1 month
yeah, so
when
little.
he was diagnosed.
Yeah.
Now our story is we knew. So we had seen all the signs with him. We had seen the stimming, the walking on his
Yep.
tiptoes, a lot of the delays. Um, and for him, he didn't do like the waving. He didn't do the pointing. A lot of the small things that would kind of at least indicate to say to so-called check the
Mhm.
box. So when we received the diagnosis, we were comfortable with the fact of it doesn't change him. For the parents out there that are afraid to go get this diagnosis because it might come back with information they don't have, just to let you know, it doesn't change your kid.
Exactly.
It provides services. Like, so when we got the diagnosis, it was almost like, okay, we had seen some of these signs early on. What's next? What services can we get? Where do we start? What books do I need to read? How long do I go through this process of, because you have to process the information as well. People forget that too. It's all happening in real
It is
time.
a lot.
This is all just, yeah, you don't just like receive this and you're like,
I know what to
okay,
do. Yeah. Yeah.
you now have yeah, yeah, it's news to you too. You still have to learn, "Okay, what are we doing now? How are we adapting to this?"
Yeah, they just hand you the diagnosis and then just say, "Make those therapy appointments." I'm like I talked about this on my TikTok. I didn't
It
post this video to my Instagram, but maybe I should.
mm,
I talked about that on my TikTok. I said, I think that there should be some type of formal, like, training, like, if the CDC wants to be so involved in controlling with everything we do with our children, including vaccinations, why isn't there a pre-recorded video to click on that's maybe 30 minutes to an hour discussing what exactly autism really truly is? And what all the terminology within autism mean, and while you're waiting for these evaluations so you can educate yourself. Now, of course, they can't say this is how your child is. Like you're going to still kind of play the guessing game, right?
yeah.
But at least you'll have an indication of like where to start. Like, oh yeah, they talked about, the vestibular system and their body in space and the stimming and the running back and forth and the tippy toes and not being regulated. And wow, you could start really looking at your child differently to help them, right? But when you don't know and you're just kind of waiting, you're just like, oh, damn, like this is really all on me to figure out. Because also, I feel like doctors play like tag next. You're it, hoping that the next therapist is going to tell you what they didn't say. Like, they didn't have enough time in that appointment to tell you everything, but you're gonna go to therapy, so, like, that therapist is gonna tell you. But we don't know that, you don't know that. So, yeah, it's really our job to educate, and it's overwhelming, and yeah, gotta process a lot.
It's like coming ho It's like coming home with your first child. You know how you're, like, taken care of in the hospital? They're checking
Yeah.
on you. Is he eating? Is he pooping? Is he doing? And then you go home and you're like, "Where are the nurses?"
Yeah, exactly, like, hello?
You know?
Yeah,
Where it's like, "Here you go."
yeah, but good for you guys though, that,
Yeah.
like, you guys
Yeah.
knew, being that you guys were first-time parents and you both recognized those signs. I mean, here I am, a veteran mom of 3 and now 4, and I was just in such denial, because I was so hyper fixated on, the nuclear medicine, and that's what caused this
Well
delay, you know?
well, that's the thing too that as you said that, it's like, yeah, but you did have that. So if you did see delays, you had something to point it
Mhm.
at. Where for us, it's normal to say, like, well, every kid learns at a different pace.
Yeah.
That was just our kind of take on it because he was also doing certain things at different ages. Um, if he takes his first step at 11, my joke is he took his first step at 11 months and then he started sprinting at 11 months in one day and he
Mhm.
was climbing up the stairs. He was doing a lot of these crazy active things, and as a former athlete, I was very proud. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, he's gonna be running up and down these stairs all the time." But then there were other things that we had seen. In our house, it's like a circle, right? So he's going from the kitchen to the dining room to the living room to the hallway, back to the kitchen to the dining
Yes.
room, and he would run around in a circle and he couldn't stop. And it was cute at first because he's running and laughing, and then all of a sudden you start to see the panic in his face
Yeah.
because he couldn't turn it off his brain. So you had to stop him physically and then hold him
Mhm.
so that he knew because it's just that neurological disconnect. We called it like he gets caught in a loop
Yes.
when he does things in a loop and he doesn't know when to stop it.
Yeah. That's true.
But you were right. You said it earlier on as just a mother's tuition. Kayla had seen and known everything 15 steps ahead of
Yeah.
me, where she's like, I'm thinking this is what I'm seeing, and she was trusting her gut, just like you, of like trusting your gut early on so many things. And she used to say the same thing. You wouldn't understand. It's a mother's
It
intuition.
is.
I'm like, I know. I was like, I know, you're right,
Yeah.
and she was right. She was right. Just like you in those situations of like, hey, it may not be this, but there's something. You're telling me to go home and everything's fine?
Yeah.
You know,
No.
I see something a little different.
Yeah. And dads too, like, you guys are, like, trying to be the calm to the storm, right? Like, "Yeah, it's okay," and then us moms are over here like, "No, no, no, you don't
Mhm.
you don't feel what we feel," you know? Like, we have some of our baby's DNA stays with us forever in our body. Like, we have this bond, and God gave
Yep.
us mother's intuition for a reason to protect our children, right? Like, that's
Mhm.
our gift. That, sorry, dads, you guys don't necessarily have that. You guys have intuition, of course, with your children,
I
but it's
know.
not the same as a mom. So,
No, no, once you understand that, for the dads listening, it's easier
yeah.
because Kayla says that she's like, "You don't get it. I made him cell by cell," and I'm
Yes.
like, "Yeah, you did. All right, you're right." You know,
Exactly.
'cause she
Yeah.
knows, she gets it. But yeah, they have like this unspoken bond
Mhm.
between them where she just knows. She's like, "I think he's getting an earache," you know, and she's
Always
dead on. She knows.
it's true, like, we are experts
Yep.
in our own kids, like, I can literally it's, like, the weirdest thing, but, like, I can smell my kid's breath, and I'll know if they're getting sick. I don't know, their breath smells differently when they get sick, and they
Wow.
all have, like, the same little, like, change in their breath, and I'm like, "You're gonna get sick," and they're like, "No." I'm like, "You're gonna get sick," and they're sick, yeah.
They're like, "Why are you
I
jinxing
know,
me,
it's, like, the
mom?"
weirdest thing, they're like, "You're so" now that they're older, like, when they were little, I just like, "Yeah, you're gonna get sick," and they'd be like, "Whatever," they don't know what I'm talking about necessarily, like, "Why is my mom being weird, like, sniffing my mouth?" Now that they're older, they're like, "You're so weird."
Oh, yeah, that's funny. So with all of this going on, there were a lot of firsts that you had to experience, especially having other children and then going through all of these first things with Mateo. Now, once he's diagnosed, maybe you take some time to process it. Like you said, you still have to, no, I get that's what they're saying, but how do I feel about it? When you came to terms with it, what were some of the first things that you what were some of the first things you're like, I have to learn this. I got to know about this because you're very passionate about what you do and how you advocate. Do you remember some of those first things? It's like, I have to learn about this, the terminology.
Yeah, like, I just felt like I thought I knew what autism was, but then once I was given the diagnosis for my son, it was kind of like I was given a test that I'd never studied for, and I was like, "What? Wait, I know nothing." I know, because like, I was also in denial, right? So then I'm like, wow, if I was in denial, I truly don't know anything about autism. And crazy part about this is the day my son was diagnosed, it was again talking about schedules. It was kind of just thrown on to us like, hey, can you come in this week? I have an opening on Thursday. I want to say it was a cancellation that we were filling in. So everything was rushed. So my husband was, in between business calls on the phone. He actually had to step out for like the last like 20 minutes. So when she told me my son was autistic, my husband wasn't even in there with me because he was on this call that he had to. It was like a Teams meeting, like, it was like he had to be on that call, and we weren't expecting the diagnosis, so I was like, "Yeah, it's okay, step out, step out." So when he comes back in, he sees me crying, and, we're like, "Okay." We didn't have time to process there. It was also, like, pouring rain that day, and I had early intervention, which they are ABA, like, BTs, but, like, they call them early interventionists, but they were BTs. And they were at my house waiting for me because right after this appointment was his normal scheduled time. So we didn't even have a chance to process this. It was just like, I'm so sorry. I know it's not what you want to hear. Your son has level 2 autism. This is what you need to do. Blah, blah, blah. I'll get you the formal report in 2 weeks. And, bye. So then we rush home. My husband goes to work and I go straight into a therapy session. And thankfully we had really good BTs. There was two of them there that day. And because we were just new with this company, and I just looked at him, I said, "Hey, I'm gonna need a minute." My son just got diagnosed with autism, and I don't know if you guys knew he was autistic or he had an inkling, but I was in denial, so I'm just gonna need a second. If you see me cry for a second, I don't ever cry in front of people, but I was like, I might shed a little tear. I just need to like, whoa, this is my first time sitting down,
Yeah.
since getting that. And
Yeah.
I just like shed a couple tears and they're like, "Are you good?" And now they're like, You want to step out?" I was just like, "No, let's get to it. Like, you guys are the specialists, right? You guys are ABA, you guys are BTs. Tell me what I need to do to help my son. What do I have to do? Because now I'm gonna put on the mama bear hat." And that's how I went about it. And they just kind of went into, hey, we are not like, we don't specialize in autism. We specialize in behavior, right? We can't necessarily tell you, you know, about autism, but we can talk about behaviors, right? And they were younger too. And so we talked about that. And then I just started educating myself. I just went down like the chat GBT Google rabbit hole for weeks. I did not sleep for weeks. My husband would be like, "What time did you go to bed?" And I'm like, 4 in the morning. And it's like 6:30 in the morning now. And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, I can't sleep because, not only does my
Yeah.
son now have autism, but the most like vital part of his autism, like the biggest struggle is the feeding. He's not eating. He's 2.5 almost. Or actually, he is 2.5. He got diagnosed at 2.5. He's not eating, a little over 2.5. So I need to figure this out. What do I have to do? And so I called and I said, I want all the therapies. I want them all. And I jumped into every therapy, like max hours, burnt myself out. And that's what I talk about too. Like, take a deep breath. Don't blame yourself. Don't focus on the why, because it's not going to change the situation. Don't throw yourself in all kinds of therapy. Take it baby steps, because you're still learning like your child's autism. You know who they are and you're the expert in them, but you're still learning what this means. And, obviously every kid, right? It's true what they say. When you've met one kid with autism, you've met one kid with autism. And so what does this mean for my kid? And what really was the game changer for me, he got diagnosed March 21st of this year. And in May, I want to say it was like May 15th or something like that, I had the most amazing SLP. I don't know if you follow Jessie, the sensory SLP, on Instagram. You
I
probably do.
I'll have to check her out just in
Yeah.
case. I probably do. You start to get everyone in there,
Yeah, if not,
you know.
I'll send you one of her reels on Instagram, because she's amazing. She calls herself the sensory SLP because she really dives into the sensory side of autism and how that translates into speech, right? And she offers courses for SLPs. She's an amazing advocate. And she also offers one-on-one calls with parents for free, which I did take that call. But my SLP had taken her course, and this SLP came to my home for early intervention. And I just started like naturally asking questions like, why does my son talk in front of the mirror? Like, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's cute. Like, but what is he doing? What, like, I can't understand what he's saying. She's like, oh, that's called echolalia. And we'll do a formal assessment, but that's what a lot of children that are Gestalt language processors do. And most likely, from just looking at him, I would say that he probably is a Gestalt language processor. I'm like, okay, what is that? And she's like, that's scripting basically. They learn in chunks of language rather than individual words, and they memorize things. And she just went into everything that meant. And I was so fascinated by it that that was like another month of like rabbit holes of like, wow, how does his brain, like, how does he memorize all these words and these episodes? And he's so little, and this is what he's saying. It's just like all jargon together. Um, and so
Yeah.
she taught me body regulation, and she told me the most important thing for your son is for him to feel regulated. And I said, what? What do you mean? She's like, body regulation. And I was like, okay, that's a new form of language to me. I had to look that up, and she went into what being dysregulated meant and what being regulated meant and what could be dysregulating and how to, try to regulate and, get into OT. And her sister was actually an OT, so she knew a lot about the OT side of things too, which was super beneficial for me as a, mom just getting this diagnosis, because here I have this SLP that's like a godsend. And she's just naming all these, she's just listing off terminology to me, like, look into this, look into that. And I'm just like, okay. And that's what I did. I literally wrote everything down that she would tell me, and I would study it and I would look into it. And this book too, right here, this book right here, this is Jesse's book, Game Changer, all
Ah.
about body regulation. And that was my next like hyper fixation was, okay, if my son is not regulated, he's not gonna be ready for next steps of learning. It's gonna be very difficult for him to accomplish anything that we're trying to work at. And if we're just like pushing ABA and earlier intervention and, throwing a timer in his face and like, all these things, and his body's not regulated, like we're just wasting time here. You know what I mean? It's all for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Learning him is the most important thing because it's very tough to advocate for them if you don't know all the little idiosyncrasies and things that get them going. There's a lot of times if people are talking too loud around Cole,
Mhm.
I can see it start to build up before he yells or has a tough time. It's because you spend a lot of time learning them. And I like what you talked about there too, because there's so much terminology. There's BTs. Is there RBT? What's a BCBA? What's SLP? What's GLP? There's all these different terminologies that while all of this is going on, you also forget that being a parent is difficult. Being a spouse and an employee and a human is difficult. Now you're learning all of this stuff too. And we have a story on Cole's feeding and his eating habits as well, which can happen with our kinds of kiddos.
Yes.
While all of this is going on, one of the most important things you guys are struggling with, having your kid eat food. That's very difficult to put on top of all of this. Even if he had a healthy diet and ate everything you put in front of him, it would still be tough.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
like it would still be tough. Yeah. With Cole early on, he had that. It was peanuts, tree nuts, soy. It was difficult. His dairy allergy went away around around the age of 1, I believe it was. So it got a little bit better. He would still get hives with certain things here and there as he has sensitive skin, but he used to crush food. He would eat 2 scrambled eggs with cheese. You could give him toast with cream cheese or butter on it. He was having sweet potato littles, pancakes, waffles, cheesies, everything. He only had water. Like he would have smoothies, strawberries, blueberries, oranges, everything.
Yeah.
The scary part for us, it's a little bit different than your story. The scary part for us is we watched that dwindle down.
Yeah.
We watched him stop eating cheese quesadillas. And then, a month later, he stopped drinking his, yogurt pouches. And then he stopped having his applesauce. And it got to a point where we were looking at each other and we're like, he's only eating 10 different foods.
My goodness.
And even today, he eats 5 things. His main foods are smoothie, and he's now eating pancakes again, which I can thank God for that because he stopped for like 3 months. His breakfast, lunch, and dinner was smoothies.
Yep.
So now it's smoothies, pancakes, strawberries, Annie's cheddar squares, and then puffs. Gerber's vanilla puffs.
Oh, yeah, my son.
Yeah. And he doesn't eat those all the time, but they're a good mix. But yeah, he eats 5 things right now.
Wow, see? And I can see now why obviously you
So
guys I mean, was this prior to the diagnosis or was this after the diagnosis? Like it just progressively happened?
I think it progressively happened. Where even after he was diagnosed, he was just crushing food. And we're like, this is awesome. He has a healthy,
Yeah.
okay, there's a lot of things that come with your diagnosis.
Mhm.
It's not just the 3 letters of ASD, but like there's potentially gut issues. There's delays. There's this, there's that.
Yes.
Totally get it. Everyone has their stuff. But for us, we're like, yeah, but he eats. So we got that. That's a win.
Yeah.
And that had dwindled. And we're like, oh no, that's tough.
And why did that happen? Because he was doing so well. What made him feel like sensitive to those foods? Do you know?
We don't even know. He wasn't he wasn't having, like, a bowel issues. He wasn't eating and feeling discomfort. Just like you had talked about with certain words, I think it was, like, unlearned,
Yeah.
where he would just stop he would get tired of the food and stop eating it, and we're like, "Dude, you ate 6 of these yesterday."
Mhm.
And then initially, you're just thinking, "Okay, he doesn't want applesauce today," and then it's the next day, and then it's the next day, and then 2 months go by, and that's just dropped off,
That's so hard. Like,
you know?
that would crush me knowing how well he ate and, like, this
That
is
was
our win, and then it's, like, slowly just going down and crashing and burning. That's hard. Yeah, the feeding is the
Yeah,
hardest part
yeah.
of my son's diagnosis too. It's the hardest part. I can manage everything else, but you wanna feed your child. You want your child to be nourished, and he is, thankfully. This shake that he drinks is doing its thing
Mhm.
because the doctor even said he's, like, slightly technically overweight on those growth charts, right? Like, which is wild to look at him and be like, "He's overweight," but you know how those growth charts are, like, they're so insane on those little percentiles, like, they want your child to be so lean, but they're like, He's growing very well with the Kate Farms, and you can drop one if you wanted to," and I'm like, "No, I'm good. I don't wanna drop one. I think he's, like, at a good weight," you know? He's like, "It's up to you," but finding those hunger cues when you're on a liquid diet is difficult, and you can only drink so much liquid before you could hear it. I could hear it in his stomach, and sometimes he's like, he wants more. So I'm like, okay, of course, I'm gonna give him more. And then I could
Mhm.
hear the liquid in his stomach, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, are you gonna throw up? Thankfully, we haven't had too big of an issue, with him vomiting because he had too much liquid, just like once or twice, but it's hard.
Yeah, there are some things that are sprinkled in there on top of the other worries that you have that, many people don't see, and, you don't really expect them to see it. It's not in their life, it's in ours.
Yeah.
And you guys have family. You guys have family that have it in there, that have some stuff going on too. So that's what we call it. Yeah, we got some stuff.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying
But
it.
it's it's beautiful stuff. It really is. I feel like sometimes I will say this too. There are a lot of people who have more difficult times. I totally get that.
Yes.
There are some people who you can see it, and sometimes if people didn't share their stories about like a level 3 or you know the 1 2s or the 3s, you would never know what severe autism is, and well, profound, and how difficult it can be. We have our challenges, for sure, but yeah, I'm grateful for every day that we have.
Yeah, no, it's very true.
you know
It's all about your perspective, right? Like once you start, and it's not like, oh my gosh, thank God my child doesn't have profound autism. It's not that. It's recognizing the difference of the struggle and the levels and realizing that that's what it could look like. And if I'm over here stressing about what this looks like while there's other families dealing with profound autism, you know, that's all perspective.
yeah,
And
yeah, no,
you gotta really reel it in and just be like, thankfully, I don't have to deal with a child that is now towering over me, and they're feeling so dysregulated in their body that they're now hitting me. We have in our family, one of my nephews does have profound autism, and my sister-in-law is very tiny. She's 4'10", tiny, and her boy is tall, and there's been times where she's had to protect herself, and it's very hard as a mom to do that. And now, she stayed home. Now the dad is staying home because of fear of her getting hurt by her son. And that is something to really consider with profound autism versus level, 1 and 2. Um, it's really,
yeah,
it's really scary, and very saddening for my sister-in-law, that she has to now go back to work for her safety, and now her husband's stepping in again for her safety, you know?
yeah, yeah. No, there's a lot of love and a lot of empathy that go to the families and the people that have that a part of their life every
Yeah.
day. And I think so many times too, this is one way I look at it, because autism is a part of our life. And when we see it on the news, you feel like it's broadcasted in the sky and everyone sees it. But I've realized that not everyone sees it. Like it's our world.
Very
Um,
true.
and there's some people who still have no idea. I mean, I know we typically hyper focus on all the news that comes out. We follow all the accounts on Instagram or
Mhm.
TikTok. Um, and I think at the end of the day, it's remembering we're all on that same team. Like we're all part of that same community, different levels, 100%. But we all want what's best for our kids at the end of the day. And you feel that level of empathy for all the other parents going through this journey as well. It's comparing doesn't help anyone, right? What are the resources? What do we need to do to make it the best experience we can for our family?
Exactly.
That's definitely something to focus on.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But I like what you talked about too, about the handicap placards. I keep bringing that up. Um, like, what was your experience with that process? And what was kind of that deciding factor that's like, this is what we need? And then I'm going to post about this.
Yeah, I almost didn't post about it too because I want to be honest and transparent, but I also like don't want to ruffle feathers and deal with like trolls online because I don't do well like
Oh, yeah.
being vulnerable, and so this is very new for me. I am an open book to people I know or people I talk to in person. I can be very open and vulnerable with you. But like just put everything out there with my life and my son and posting his face and all of these things and talking about things I'm doing, they're all up for discussion now. You know what I mean? I'm putting it out there and people
Yeah.
can now discuss my personal life and decide what their judgment's going to be on it, you know? So I almost didn't do it, but I was like, I'm going to post and I'm gonna say it in a way that no trolls or haters can come for me because it's important that other parents hear this. Um, and so my brother-in-law was
Yeah.
talking to me. Their son just got diagnosed about a little over a year ago. I want to say, just turned 4.5. Yeah, he's like 4.5. It's a little bit older than Mateo. Um, and we were talking about the handicap, place cards, placards, place cards. Here we call them place cards, but online I saw it was a placard, and I was like, "Oh gosh, did I use the wrong terminology?" um, but I was like, "Is it a place card or is it a placard?" But my brother-in-law was like, "You should really, consider one for Mateo because he elopes." And I said, "Well, I was talking to his doctor about that, um, and I told her I didn't want it." And he's like, "Why? Why did you tell her that?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just felt like weird. Like I Mateo's not like disabled in that way. And like I don't know. I just feel weird getting one." He's like, and then he pointed everything out to me and he's like, "Truthfully, like think about if Mateo got away. He's so little, he's so small. You have all these other kids, like you can't have your eyes, hands, and ears in one place at, all times, and everyone's coming out of the suburban, it's like
Mm-hmm.
literally the Brady Bunch is like, we count our kids, you know? And what happens if Mateo got away in a busy parking lot? I bet you'd wish that you had that place card. And I was like, dang,
Yeah.
okay, that's a good point, brother. So I made an appointment with
Mm-hmm.
the doctor and we were, discussing everything. And she's like, "Yeah, I told you, like, you need to get one of those." She's like, "I'm just going to fill out the form." And I was like, okay. She didn't even like hesitate. She's like, "Da-da." She just filled it out and she gave it to me. She's like, "You're just gonna take this to the DMV." And I think she told me it was gonna be like $5, but actually it was free. They didn't charge me. She's like, "It'll be like $5 and you're just gonna, fill out your address, sign, and you're gonna get it right then and there." And she's like, "And don't feel bad about it."
Oh, wow.
It was the easiest process. And so I said, "Okay." She's like,
Yeah.
I told you the same thing. You need this. Mateo is an eloper. Like I'm gonna I'm afraid when he gets older. I'm hoping that we can get this under control, but that's something that I haven't really gone down the rabbit hole with, like, eloping as they get older. Like, does it get better? Does it worse? Can you control it? I don't know. He's only 3. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I went down to the DMV and I got
Yeah.
it, and I use it
That's awesome.
often, and thankfully no one said anything to me, and if they did, I'd be like, "Mind your business."
Oh, yeah. I like how you talked about that, the sharing of the information, because I went back and forth as
Mhm.
well. So I think I had this Instagram account for not the podcast one, but my personal one for a while, but I had like deactivated, activated. But my Facebook, I started like gosh, it may have been like October 2024 that I remade one, because I had that mindset. You can go through those times, right? You can go through those times of struggling to deal with and coping with some of the stuff. And for me, I'm an introvert, which is weird because I have a podcast,
I
but
get it.
talking to people hasn't always been my thing.
Mhm.
But for me, I went back and forth of, why am I going to share everything to people that don't bother asking? I played that game a lot of like, why am I going to educate people that don't want to text or call, that know that we have this diagnosis, that know that our lives might be a little bit different and it's tougher to go out as much, but I'm sharing it with them. And I found out it was like a therapy for me as well.
Yes.
It was something that I had needed. It was something that was, why would I change this any other way? If all my typical friends are sharing their typical kids,
Yeah.
why can't I share mine even if it looks a little bit different?
That's a great point.
And then I was like, oh, I was like, oh, you're the idiot that didn't really think about it that way.
Yeah.
So I never had a problem with what we do out in public. The idea was sharing it. And as you're talking about, are there going to be trolls? I try my best to live by like the motto that's, don't take to heart the criticisms from people that you wouldn't seek advice from. So if I'm not going to entrust you with, hey, maybe I'm messing up here. What do you think I could do? Which is a very small list of people that you trust to kind of call you out on your BS of like, maybe you should be thinking that maybe you should do this. Why did you do it this way? Why are you saying that? There's a very
Mhm.
small list of people that you want to call you out in certain moments.
Yeah.
So most of the people out there, because we lay on the ground at Target and play with toys, you kind of get
Mhm.
some looks here and there, but I don't care. I'm probably never going to see you again.
That is the best way to look at it.
Yeah.
I feel like that too with my son. He drinks from a bottle, right? Still, he drinks from a Dr. Brown's bottle. And I think that's like my biggest takeaway with autism is that I was ignorant before thinking autism, like you said, like when it's on the news, right? It's like it doesn't hit the same way to people that are not affected by autism. It's just like, oh, yeah, their child's autistic. They probably have some feeding struggles. They don't really, they have picky eating and they have a speech delay and they're not very social, right? That's what you think, and that's what
Yeah.
I thought as well, right? And now here I am as a mother of an autistic child, and my son is 3, 3, almost 3 and a half, and he's a big boy laying across me, and I'm 5 foot nothing. So I'm over here trying to feed my kid because, he doesn't know how to put his head back to drink his bottle. I have to lay him down like he's an infant still. And so people like I used to feel embarrassed, like, oh my gosh, because I had the mindset of like they don't know any better, like I didn't know any better. So now here I am on the other side of things feeding my son his bottle, and he's, 3 years old, obviously looks way too big to be drinking from a baby bottle, especially laying down like an infant. And what are these parents thinking? I used to feel like embarrassed, like, oh my gosh, not embarrassed of my son at all whatsoever, but embarrassed, like, are they judging me as a parent? Like, are they thinking I'm like a lazy mom that, lets her kids still drink from a baby bottle? And I remember like that feeling of like, oh God, I feel like they're shaming me. Or I would see people look at me, and now I'm just like, I don't give a shit. I'll bust that bottle out and I'll look at you and I'll shake that bottle and yes, yes. He's
Mm-hmm.
drinking from a bottle. Yes. Do you
Yeah.
have something to say?
No,
Because I don't care.
I think it becomes a little bit easier when you have that mindset of even yourself not knowing just a couple years ago.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
So when I think about that too, of getting upset with people for maybe not knowing, I also remind myself in those moments of like, dude, you didn't know 4 years ago. Like, of course,
Yes.
people are going to look at you and judge. It's normal for them to almost do that because it's not a part of their life. Just as much as it's become normal for me to almost be okay with it. Like, yeah, you probably don't see this. We'll be sitting there if he wants to watch his iPad on the Target floor while we're eating cheesies, and I'm laying on the floor with him and we're taking up half the aisle.
Yeah.
That's fine. I don't, like I said,
That's what you
I'm
need.
probably not going to see you again. You
Exactly.
know? So,
And that is the best way to go about it, because otherwise it will eat you up, you know?
mhm.
You'll not wanna go out, you'll constantly feel like you're being judged, and no one wants to feel like that 24/7,
Yeah.
especially when you're already dealing with all the other struggles, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't care anymore. I'm like, let someone say something to me at this point. But yeah, you're right. That is a good point. Thankfully I haven't had anyone say anything, but I have felt eyes, on my child multiple times, and
Yeah.
especially like looking like a helicopter mom when I go to like the indoor play parks or wherever I take him, I have to chase him around, I
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
will just go wherever. And so I look like this crazy helicopter mom. And I know parents are like judging me because I'm literally, here's Mateo, and here I am right there, you know?
And they're probably thinking, let him be. He has to do this on his own. Stop being. And
Exactly.
it's like, yeah, you can think that. You do what you want with
Yeah,
your kid. I'm gonna do what I want with mine. And and
exactly. I'm
and
like,
you're do.
your kid's too far for my comfort, actually.
Yeah, I'm feeling kind of
You need-
nervous about your kid.
yeah.
Yeah. So you had talked about the place cards and getting out of the car looking like the Brady Bunch, which leads me
Mhm.
to ask, how are the siblings with him? How is that interaction? Are there things that you work on in those
They're
situations?
amazing. I educate them like I educate my husband. So he, asked me how therapy goes, and I run it down to him. And I also, my kids, they're amazing. Our kids are, honestly, they're the best kids. And the biggest compliments I get are when people compliment me on my kids. Like
Yeah.
all the earlier interventionists that came to my home were like, the love your kids share here in this house is so beautiful. And I knew that, but having other people see that, like, that's, like, the best feeling, and they are amazing. Like, when Mateo, before he was diagnosed, he only liked to watch things that had, like, rich intonation, right? Because he was a GLP, and
Mm-hmm.
so, but I didn't know that, right? So, I just knew he took to Miss Rachel, and Miss Rachel, obviously, we know her voice is like a
Yep.
melody.
Oh yeah.
And so
Oh yeah.
once I realized, like, oh, he loves her. He listens to what she says. He's like so engaged with her. I can't get him to engage like that with me. But it's because my voice wasn't, I didn't have the intonation that she did, right? So I learned that. And then I told my kids, hey guys, we're gonna start, all of us are gonna walk around this house and we're gonna talk like Miss Rachel. And my kids like got a kick out. They're like, "That's funny, mom." I said, "No, no, no." And so, like, when they would ask him things or talk to him, I'd be like, "Hey, you said, like, 'Where's the ball?' But you need to say, 'Where's the ball?'" And my kids were like, "Okay." And so slowly but surely, they did it. And we all were, even my husband, my husband did too. And we're all just like, over enunciating the words and, prolonging our words just so we
Mm-hmm.
have that like intonation in our voice. And my kids did it. And it was like the most beautiful thing because Mateo's face would light up when we all sounded like Miss Rachel.
And you know what, too? Like, they're so much smarter than we give them credit for. It's probably also the understanding of like, they know I love Miss Rachel and they're doing this for me.
Yes.
It's the
Yeah.
small things that's like the family coming together and adding those dynamics because like you're raising future, not future because I'm sure they are now, but you're raising advocates as well. I
Yeah.
mean, as parents, our job is to try to if you commit to what we're trying to do by sharing our story, which not everyone does, I totally get that. But like what's behind sharing? To create awareness and acceptance
Yes.
for people so that me and Kayla saw one of our friends in Target the other day. And because I talk about, if you see me in the store and I'm with Cole, or you see us in the store with Coco, don't just walk up and give us a hug and, hi, how's it going? Because you will
Mm.
dysregulate him. And by
Yes.
sharing that, now people will see me and they're like, and we'll get
Yeah.
the text later, like, I
Cool.
saw that you had posted this, that, don't just walk up to you. And it's happened on multiple occasions, and it's awesome.
See? That is so cool.
Yeah, it's
And
like
this is
sign language.
when yes, and that's when the good part of social media comes out, right? And that's
Hmm.
why we're doing what we're doing and sharing our story, to have that side of the internet, right?
Yeah,
Like where they're like, "Oh yeah, we got educated." I mean,
yeah.
it's the same thing for us over here, like having family members and nephews with autism, but not really knowing what my sister-in-law and brother-in-law were going through. We didn't know what their day-to-day was. And now I get it. And now I just have this like utmost respect and love and bond even more than we did before because it's like, I see you.
It's crazy how quick that bond happens. There are parents that I've met that you just build this unbelievable bond with in a month that maybe you didn't have with someone that you've known for 20 years, because your life has changed as you go through this journey as well. And for you and your husband, you're balancing both of them. You're balancing the neurotypical, I don't want to say the neurotypical parent versus the neurodivergent parent, because you're parents to both. That's
Mhm.
first things first. But there are certain things that you maneuver a little bit differently to make things work for each kid, because every kid is their own human, their own person. It's important for people to always remember that. But yeah, you can build that connection with other special needs parents because you're like, hey, you're like me.
Yeah.
You,
Our kids do the same thing.
let's be
Yeah.
friends. Let's be friends. We know the struggle, because
Yeah.
sometimes you can't call your neurotypical parent friends to talk about tougher days when it comes to certain things. That's
Yeah.
why, like, as we'll talk, we're like, I know what you're talking about with that one. Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
there's certain
Yep.
experiences that we'll have.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Just like
it,
you said with your son when he runs back and forth, like that's something my son he still does, but he did it a lot when he was like, 1.5 to 2.5. Like, and again, he still does that. He runs back and forth to like self-regulate.
mhm,
Um, But he would do it so, so much that even the earlier interventionist, that's what she asked me, "Does he do this all the time?" Little, like, hints of, like, "Okay, noted,"
yeah,
We got noted, and I'm like, "Why is she asking me that? Like, is she judging me as a parent that I let him run back and forth?" That's what I'm thinking
yeah,
because he wasn't diagnosed, so I'm like, "Is she judging me?" Like, but no,
oh
she's
yeah,
she's note-taking.
yeah. So with you guys with schooling, what's your experience, and what do you hope for in the near future when it comes to schooling for Mateo? Are you doing homeschool? Is he doing the
Yes.
services?
Well, right now we are in therapy, like, outside of the school district. I did do the IEP meeting, which was a great process, a really good team, thankfully, and, I did have to rewrite the goals, though, like, should he go to preschool or TK, because, again, you have to advocate, right? And
Yeah,
you can't blame people for what they don't know because the school system is so old school and it's set up the way it's been set up for years, and it takes parents like us to be like, no, we're not gonna write our goals based off of, teacher compliance. We're gonna write our goals off of child-led supports.
yeah,
And once I opened that discussion up with them and I showed them the difference of how you can have the same goal, but make it supportive of my son's needs and not compliance based, like we can have a winning team here, guys, and everyone can win. And so I did that whole process. But for me, just decided that he's so little right now, and I feel like his best teacher is me. And it's only 3 hours a day. I couldn't go out and still get a job, because I did get laid off earlier this year in February because it was very hard to balance, and they called it a layoff, but they nicely fired me. They nicely fired me. It was hard to balance. They were very nice people. But it was hard to balance the therapy and the job, right? And so sending Mateo to school for only just 3 hours a day and then not, with all his feeding struggles just didn't make sense to me. Like, no one is the expert in Mateo, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And sure, finances are super tight right now and it's hard in California as is. And then you add just one income and it's really difficult,
Yep.
but we're doing what we can for our son and what's the best thing right now. And so we chose, to keep him home and I'm, doing little preschool. I set up a little preschool in my loft and I did a reel on that too. It's like I didn't have the space for it, but I'm making do with what I have and it's in my loft and there's Christmas trees and decorations and there's preschool stuff and there's a
Hmm.
circle time mat and a numbers chart and a visual schedule and all the things he needs to support him because like I'm going to do whatever it takes, and until his feeding, improves, I have to keep him home with me. And so that, him going to public school or going to school outside of our home will really be like determined on how well, he does with food and what changes. Because right now it just the school setup is not set up for him with
Yeah.
his feeding delay. It's just not.
A lot of people don't see that. A lot of people
Yeah.
don't, that's not one thing they're worried about with their kids going to school. And I'm not going to say everyone because that's not fair either. But if you sit back and think about, is my kid going to eat at school? That's a scary thing because if, like you talked about, if you're feeding him with a bottle laid back, are you going to,
Hmm.
are you going to have teachers and trust teachers to be able to do that, or paras and stuff like that? At least now you can kind of control your environment. You can work towards what he takes to. If it's a teaching style like Miss Rachel, you can
Yes.
get him to love the learning process while also trying to improve the feeding
Yep.
you
And
know
that's basically what I'm doing is it's hard to get him to sit any longer than a couple minutes because he's just has the little
Yep.
zoomies, So trying to get him to focus right now is hard. And he doesn't like the timer. Like the timer
Hmm.
has the opposite effect for him. He hates that timer. So I don't do the timer anymore. So I'm trying to figure out like a middle ground. And I think it's just like day by day, just like the routine, right? I'm like, okay, it's time for learning, it's time for circle time. We're gonna do ABCs and one, two, threes, and we're gonna go over. I have like this poster that I buy from another mom on Instagram. Her child, from what I know, does not have autism. Um, her child is fairly young. I want to say under 2, and she does preschool with him. Her kid
Mm.
is like, whoa, like he can speak English and Spanish, and so she sells these poster charts, and it's literally the ABCs, and, like, each week you have a different letter, a different color, an animal, a shape, and then you write, like, your daily affirmations on it, and so that's what I do with him, and some things he, like, really impresses me and surprises me, and other things we're still working on. Other things I'm like,
Yeah.
"Wow, I didn't even know that he knew, like, what that was or what that meant," and then now he's repeating these words or saying these things, and so it's pretty cool. I mean, I've never been a homeschool mom. Like, I've always been a working mom. So with
Yeah.
my other 3 kids, I never stayed home. I was a working mom, 8 to 5 in the office. I had them in preschool, daycares, after school cares. So this is very new, to me.
Yeah.
And I'm very
Yeah.
much still learning as I go.
And that's going to continue. I think the parents who think they have it figured out, sorry to tell you, you
No.
don't, because your kids are constantly growing. How do you have it all figured out? One week they like this, the next week they like that, so
Yes.
you have to grow with them. It's a humbling experience to be able to be like, I am the expert today. Let's see how
Yeah,
tomorrow goes. You know?
exactly.
So that's, I mean, and we've kind of touched based on it. Was there a moment that made you want to start sharing? Like what was it like recording your first TikTok or Instagram and saying like, I am gonna post about this now? What made you want to do that?
I think what made me wanna do it, well, I was being encouraged by family, like, and friends, and, "Why are you not doing this online? Like, you're doing this in real life outside of social media. You have so much knowledge and the way you're passionate, the way you explain things, like, you could really help parents." And I'm like, "I don't know." Like, just that vulnerability side again, like, do I really wanna share my son? And because I feel like it's hard to share this experience when you don't share your child's face. Because I wasn't gonna share his face at first, I was gonna blur his face out, but then I was like, "Well, this is really hard to do." Especially because he's a Gestalt language processor, you need to see his facial expressions
That's
and
part of his behavior, his language, and
yes,
many times, like reading his face. What they say, like 70% of communication is body language, something along those lines. But it's like that's for you the indicator of what he wants most of the time is his body motion, his facial expressions, not his
exactly.
words all the time.
Yes. Yeah, and so I said, "Well, if I'm gonna just do it, I'm gonna go all in or nothing, and let's just see how it goes." And I'm doing this because there are several amazing accounts out there, don't get me wrong, but I didn't find an account that was talking about, like, the real raw emotion side of just having a child, get diagnosed with autism and how that feels.
Yeah.
And everyone seemed to romanticize their child's autism online, and I think, like, some of them really do feel that way, right? And some of them may just say that because they don't wanna be judged online.
Yeah.
And while I can romanticize my son's autism because I'm obsessed with my son, I love him. Anyone that knows my son and I's relationship is we like you said, your wife and your son have that bond. My son and I can look at each other in a room and just, like, immediately start giggling and laughing, and,
Yeah.
like, it's the cutest thing, right? So
Mhm.
I adore my son, but autism, it's fucking hard. It
Yeah.
is really fucking hard,
Yeah.
and it's heartbreaking, and I didn't hear any moms talking about that side of autism. I didn't hear that part. And maybe because I only had Instagram. On TikTok, I feel like it's a different vibe, and
Hmm.
I got TikTok after I started this. I started them both at the same time, and I feel like on TikTok, they talk about that more. It's more raw, real. On Instagram, it's a little more surface level. You know, there are accounts talking about how hard it is, don't get me wrong, but I think what happens is, like we were talking about, when children evolve, you also forget where you were when they first got diagnosed, and so
Yeah.
I didn't find an account like that, and I didn't see any accounts with a mom, and I understand why, because 'cause we're busy as heck, and it's a lot to take in at first, and I am losing a little bit of sleep doing these videos and stuff, but I'm doing it, for, like, the greater good, I guess, and
Yeah.
hopefully I'm helping parents because I didn't see another mom that I could connect to instantly. I saw children that I was connecting through my child, like, "Oh my gosh, that little boy's doing what my boy does." Like, "Yes," like,
Yeah.
"Okay, cool." But I wasn't connecting on the motherly side with, like, the mom was feeling how I felt, and then I started feeling like, "Dang, should I not feel like this? Like, is something wrong with me that I feel, like, sad and, like, should I not feel sad? Like, but but it's like a grieving process, they say, but should I not be, like, grieving? Like, I don't like that word. He's not dead. He's alive. He's thriving. Why
Yeah.
do you know, what are these feelings? And no one's talking about that because these mothers have already their children are a couple years older. They're a couple years into that diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
And they forgot how hard it was in the beginning because that most people are not gonna document the first couple months because you're learning.
You're
Where's the
figuring
time?
everything out. And
Yes.
too, like, it's kind of what you talked about. It's not like, I don't want to say shaming, but I'll say shaming because I can't think of a better
Mhm.
word right now. But it's unpopular to talk about how difficult it is without like looking like you're feeling sorry for yourself or you're
Yeah.
complaining or you don't love your child. Like, what's wrong with you? And it's like you can't even share
Yes.
some of that stuff sometimes because it's typically the people who aren't involved will be the first ones to say that. Now,
Mhm.
the parents, like the parent like me, I can watch someone go through happy, happy, happy day and then post something about a really tough, difficult day. And I'm like, yeah, that comes too. That's
Yes.
part of it. Like, we're all humans. Like, you should
Mhm.
be able to talk about that because it's real. And it actually taps into other parents who feel that, like, okay, I'm not the only one who feels this way. I'm not the only one who
Exactly.
went through this.
Yes. I feel like on my most vulnerable posts, I get the most replies and I get direct messages of mothers saying like, "Thank you. I also feel like this and I don't feel comfortable talking about it and no one understands." I'm like, "This is why I'm doing it." And that's why I always just try to say like, "These are just my experiences, right? Like this is just how I feel. This is like, every kid on the spectrum is different, right? And they're gonna land on that spectrum where they land, and, like, so are we as parents. Like, we're gonna
Hmm.
land where we land, and it's gonna keep changing because we're gonna start understanding our children more, and it's gonna feel a little less scary, but it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to be like, "This fucking sucks today." Like,
Yeah.
who's gonna sit there and be like, "Oh, yeah, amazing. My son didn't eat today again. We did feeding therapy and he got dysregulated and we had to stop because we're not gonna do therapy dysregulated, so we really didn't accomplish anything other than an upset, and now we're gonna go home and he's gonna drink his bottle.
Yeah.
It was a great day." No,
I,
it's not. That's so
yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
That sucks. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
home and I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry
Yeah. That's what
because
I
I want
want
my
to
son
do.
to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, one thing for me about coming into posting was just understanding that of do this for you, do this for the few people you can help. And then I had to start I had to start portioning, okay, if you post this much content, what is the percentage of dumb comments you're going to get? That
Yeah.
way, you will be okay when you get to that point. Because I would post
Yeah.
stuff on YouTube and Instagram, and eventually I have different guests on. People are talking about different things. People are going to comment about this or that. It's totally
Mhm.
fair. It's people's opinions. The only thing we're doing by this is creating the conversation. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, that's beside the point. The fact is
Exactly.
now we're talking. We're talking about what's
Yes.
going on. There's education that can go back and forth. And it's also tough for people to tell you that you're wrong when it's your story. So you're wrong.
Right?
You shouldn't feel that way. It's like, yeah, all right, buddy.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
exactly,
You can
like,
say that if you
this is
want.
my life, like, you're not living my day to day, and I'm not living your day to day, and, like, I made a video about this too, is like, the parents that say, like, I would never change anything about my child, I will never take their autism away." That's out of love, but the same thing can be said about me, where I would take my son's autism away in a heartbeat. There Sign me up. I'm taking it all away. Because guess what? He's still going to be amazing. He's still going to be cute, funny, silly. He's still going to be him. He's just not going to have the struggles of autism. It's not autism itself, it's the struggle
Well,
that comes with autism.
yes. Yeah. There's a lot of people who actually talk about that and shed light on it because that question alone is like it's a setup question, right?
Yeah.
Where they're like, would you take it away? And if you say no, it's like you get the silent applause from everyone else that like you're so strong. And then if you
Yeah.
say yes, it's like so there's a problem. And it's such a
Yeah. Like,
lose-lose situation. But Erica, right? Her Instagram's autistic, wild, and free. And she shares and she talks about her kids. She's awesome. She's my wife and my good friend. And
okay.
when she's asked about that, she says, I would take away the suffering, yes, because that's the part that a lot of people don't see that come with it. They think the title and the label comes, and that's that. And it's like, no, but there's suffering tough parts that come with it because of it. And
Exactly.
that's the one thing that can be tough to kind of convey to people. Like, there's
Mhm.
challenges that come with that diagnosis, not just as a parent. It's tough. You have your feelings too, but it's like, if you're asking if I would want my kid to suffer, the answer is no. So
Exactly.
take that answer as you will, but
Yes.
no one wants their kids to suffer,
No. And I
you
think
know?
that they don't see it that way because they
Mhm.
fear the judgment side of like, so you don't
Exactly.
really love your kid then because your kid's not gonna be the same kid. Well, yes, they would be themselves. They just wouldn't have the struggle side, right? So, like
Yeah.
to me, I feel like both sides are out of love, right?
Mhm.
You wouldn't change anything because you want to like have that protection over your child of who they are, right? Like I'm protecting them as who they are. And I love every ounce of who they are. And so that's out of love. But the same thing can be true over here on this side is that I love every ounce of who my son is too. And I
Yeah.
would never want to change his personality, but I want him to eat food and I want him to feel safe in his body. And I want my son to not feel like he has to pace back and forth. And I want my son to be okay when we lie him back to change his diaper, where he doesn't feel like, he doesn't know his body in space and he's now panicking because it feels unsafe.
Yes.
And, I have to change him standing up now. I want my son to not feel like animal figurines that, he sees them on TV. Now he sees the figurine, he thinks it's going to come to life. He's terrified of animal figurines, like because he sees them on TV running wild. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh shoot, this thing is going to come alive. His brain doesn't press that like brain body disconnect, right? He doesn't know the perception of like this is just a fake figurine. He just has that image of his head of like the tires running through the wild, right? It's going to get me. So it's like
Yeah.
those are the things that you have to think about. Like, yeah, they're both out of love.
That people don't think about. A lot
Mhm.
of people wouldn't think about that from an animalistic standpoint of like his association is based on what he's seen on TV to differentiate TV, a real life animal,
Yes.
and a toy. They're three different things, but
Mhm.
maybe not to him. And that's what a lot of people won't see when you give your decision on what you would do in those situations. Like, but you gotta walk in her shoes because you are also the mother of neurotypical children. So you
Yes.
have been able to compare and contrast, where me, I haven't been. And I said that earlier. That's why there's a level of respect that comes with it. It's because I can, and just like your child, you can only tell your story about your kids. And it's
Yes.
always good to share and hear other people's perspective because I don't have those battles about the
Yes.
toys. Like Cole loves toys, stuffed animals, all of
That's
that
awesome.
stuff. Um, and fortunately, he can differentiate the two, I believe, because
Yes.
there's not that level of panic, but not
Mhm.
everyone is that fortunate in your
Yes.
situation with it, as an example.
And let me say, I just wanna tell you something right now when you're saying, how you and your wife know no different. In a way, I wanna say that that's a blessing for you guys in a sense, because on the flip side here, I do know what the neurotypical toddler is, right?
Yes.
And it makes me feel sometimes like I'm being robbed, like the autism robbed that side, right?
Mhm.
And we 100% still find enjoyment in everything we do with him, and he's literally like
Oh yeah.
the best temperament. Like he didn't struggle with transitions until just recently. But his temperament is like anyone that meets him is like, oh my God, he's like the sweetest little boy. He's like so funny and happy go lucky, no stranger danger. He's like very loving. So there's nothing that I would change about my son, but I wish that we had that toddlerhood. Like, this is my first holiday season as my son's diagnosed with autism, right? So every year, every holiday this year has been the first having acknowledgement of, okay, this is what this means, and this is why he reacts this way because it's part of his sensory overload. This is his autism. And so now we know why, right? Which is
Yeah.
great. But it's like, I'm like, wow, if my son didn't have autism, where would we be right now? Would I be back in the field? Would I be working? Would he be going to preschool and coming home with like cute little turkey hands and paintings and the little Santa drawings and, taking Santa pictures at preschool like my other kids, like, there's all these moments, like doing sugar cookies, um, drinking hot cocoa. There's all these little moments that, I make things very like magical for my kids at the holidays. Like I'm a very festive mom person. I like to celebrate everything. And so I still include him in those celebrations, but he's not interested, right? And so
Yeah.
that's the part that breaks my heart is that he's not interested in that. And so that makes me feel sad. And
Yeah.
so knowing the difference is kind of harder than not knowing the difference in a way. So in a sense, count that as a blessing where you're not you're not missing anything because you don't know what that side is like versus I know what that toddlerhood can look like, and I miss that because I was used to that with my other 3. Not to say we don't find enjoyment, again, there's lots of enjoyment,
Oh,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's
No,
different.
no. That's
It's
beside the
different.
point. That's beside the point of what we could actually talk about.
Yeah.
You can talk about the struggles without knowing that there's love there, that there's appreciation. That still means you can speak about the struggles. And just because you speak about the good doesn't mean there's not struggles. You know
Yes.
what I mean? If I
Exactly.
post a bunch of positive things about Coco, it doesn't mean we don't have tough days. It doesn't mean that we don't get, you know, 2 to 3 hours of sleep a day because, it's that kind of stuff. It has to go hand in hand. And sometimes autism parents tend to get that. But yeah,
Yeah.
you're right about talking about going through the first holidays of having that diagnosis and saying, okay, this makes sense. That goes both
Mhm.
ways. Two things can be true. That can be extremely beneficial because you can be proactive and like, okay, say he has issues to flashing lights. You're like, where do we go for the
Yeah.
Christmas season to be smart? Maybe he doesn't. So you're like, he really likes lights. Let's go here. But it also
Mhm.
opens up the doors to you have to proactively thinking about what things might tick him off. Okay, now we
Yes.
can't go to the zoo, or now we can't go here, because now you're putting it in your mind to protect him and not even put him in those
Exactly.
situations. We have that where we're like, can we drive 45 minutes, go do this and drive 45 minutes back? If you have a typical kid, you're
Depends
probably
on
not
the
thinking
day.
of that. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
that's good. But on a more serious note, if you had a message for your husband, maybe you tell him every day, maybe you don't get to tell him enough, what would that be?
That he is the hardest worker that I know, and I appreciate everything he does for our family, even more so now, seeing the lack of sleep he gets, and he still gets up and is at work on time every single day. He picked up a job now on Saturdays. He's working with his stepdad doing like construction. Um, his stepdad's like a construction handyman, and so like a contractor. So they go do like side jobs on Saturdays, and he picked that up because finances are tight and we lost my whole income. And I also was in sales, and with sales comes a salary plus commission, right? So
Yeah.
losing two pays in a sense, right? So I appreciate the hustle, the drive that my husband has to support like our journey and what our life looks like now. And I appreciate him really stepping into that dad role for Mateo because, like you said, right, every kid is going to be different, whether they're on the spectrum or not, and tailoring everything that Mateo needs and really applying it because he doesn't see the day-to-day struggles. He just takes
Mhm.
my word for it, right? He's here, on the weekends, but he doesn't see Mateo the way I see Mateo. He doesn't have to
Mhm.
work through all the, struggles and the crying and therapy and all the things, but he really applies it. And so I appreciate him so much for really having the patience because not all dads have that, and seeing Mateo's autism for being autism and not defiance, right? Because also some dads have friends that struggle with their husbands, and them seeing, their autism and dysregulation as defiance. So I appreciate that my husband really, really, truly understands our son's autism. He may not be the expert in all autism and understanding it in the way that I do, but he is an expert in our son, and so I applaud him for
Yes.
that
That's
because that's a hard
amazing.
for a man to do.
Yeah, and a busy man as well. Sometimes you have to make those decisions on, we got to be really good at covering the ground that we can. And if you're the one that's taking care of the home and educating and learning as much as you can about the daily life of being a typical mom and an autism mom, and he has to go out there and provide that as well. There are certain sacrifices and things that you guys are both making,
Yes.
that's not
Yeah.
always seen. You might
No,
see the mom and you're like, easy for her. She gets to stay home. It's like, you don't think that there's things that are out there that I could be doing in the sacrifices you're making. And it's the same thing with him. He has to sacrifice the time with the kids. And that's where the
exactly.
strength of that relationship comes into play to say, we're making this work, we're thriving, and we're doing the best that we can right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the best thing. Another thing is that I would tell my husband is thank you for recognizing the work that I do. Because my husband, he does. He will come home and he'll be like, "I got Mateo." And then I'm like, if it was a hard day in therapy and I'm like sad and I'm like, beside myself, he's like, I got it. Like, you know, it's okay. Go take some time to yourself. And then I'm like, but sometimes I'm like, no, it's okay. Cause then I feel bad because I'm like, well, then where's your break? You worked your ass off all day and then you got to come home. And then now you're going to be on Mateo duty all night? And so I just appreciate that so much that he's willing to still sacrifice his sleep when he comes home and recognizes that I am not just a stay-at-home mom. And
Yeah.
even the stay-at-home moms that have neurotypical kids, they still don't just stay at home. Like, I had a barber actually tell me, and he knew that my son had autism. He's like, "So now you're a stay-at-home mom? Like, now that, your son's diagnosed? Like, that's cool. You get a kick back at home. That's nice. You don't have to worry about working." And I just looked at him. I said, if you don't shut up right now, you have no idea. Just stop talking. Like, you don't even know what my day to day. I said, I live in my car, bro. I was like, I go to therapies left and right, and I do school pickups. I got two in middle school and one in high school. Like, I barely have time to eat lunch? So my husband recognizes that, and that's really important for the husbands that are listening is to recognize what your wife is doing in the sacrifice because I had my career and I was thriving in my career. I loved what I did and I never thought that I would miss work? So like just because your wife is staying at home doesn't mean she's not busting her ass even more than she would if she was working.
Yes.
Because
That
at
is
work you get a
very
break.
true.
You get a lunch break.
Yeah.
You could go like take a 15-minute walk and, like, clear your head, like, when you're a autism mom at that. My son's new fixation is he can't sit still for more than 5 minutes. We have a two-story, and we have 5 bedrooms because we're a big family, right? So he wants to go in every room. He wants to go in his gym. He wants to go in the loft. He wants to go in our room. He wants to go in the bathrooms, and we'll be in I just rotate rooms every 5 to 10 minutes right now. That's my life.
Oh, yeah. There's hey, I know it. I know it.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
And you talked about your kids. What's a message you would wanna leave with your kids?
Goodness. My kids are gonna get me teary-eyed. Um, they're amazing. All of my kids are absolutely amazing, and I don't like saying step kids, I have bonus babies because 'cause they're
Yeah.
definitely a big bonus to my life, and the dynamic between our children, like, they are all they all act like they're blood bonded. It's not a step role, it's they really call each other brother and sister, and the dynamic between the 6 of them and the love that they have for Mateo, it is the most beautiful, purest form of love that I've ever, ever seen, and anybody that's around my kids says that to me, and I know it, and that's something that I do, like, feel like I could boast about, like, makes me very happy. They're amazing kids. They all do really good in school. They advocate at school for other kids that have autism. My daughter came home and said, "Mom, there was a substitute teacher who was being mean to this girl in my classroom, and I don't know for sure if she's on the spectrum, Mom, but she does have a para, and she has they know what paras are. We talk about this stuff. She has a para and an aid, and
Yeah.
she has some struggles, and she was so mean to her, and all the kids were mad, And she was like, "I said something to her. Is that okay?" And I was like, "Yes." "What did you say though?" She's like, "I said, she doesn't know that, and our other teacher doesn't make her do that, so I don't think you should talk to her like that." And I said, "You said that?" She's like, "Yeah." I said, "That's exactly what you should say. That was
Yeah.
perfect. Now I'm gonna call the school, and I'm also gonna have a talk with them about
Yeah.
that substitute teacher and hope that they notify the parent of that child," you know? So it's like, my kids are amazing advocates at school for other children too, and to see the way that Mateo has changed even them in, like, the most positive way is just I don't know, I can't ask for much more as a mom than to have little humans that are so compassionate and empathetic and loving and will stand up to bullies.
Yeah.
My kids have stood up to bullies for other kids on multiple occasions.
That's big because you think about
Yeah,
how much you've taken on advocacy in the past couple years and what it means to you and how much you know it means to the people who need it most, and yet you're looking at younger reflections of you and your family, and you're like, they're gonna have a very good head start on making
they
the
are.
world a better place, you
They
know?
are, and my son before Mateo, his name is Cash, and he my advocacy actually started truthfully with him, not just with the seizure he had, but he has something called microtia atresia, which is his right ear is underdeveloped, and so the outer ear did not develop all the way. He has his inner ear function, so he can hear perfectly fine, well, with the hearing aid,
Mhm.
um, but it's called a conductive hearing loss, so he doesn't have an ear canal. And so because there's not that ear
Uh,
canal, no sound can travel through to all the inner ear functions. And so it's a visible, you know,
yeah,
I don't like the word birth defect, but it's a, visible difference, right? And so because of that difference, my children have always been big advocates for their younger brother. And then my son, I taught him the same thing. Like, if anyone asks you what happened to your ear or they, tease you, like, you can make up a funny story. Like, a shark bit my ear, or I saved my sister from a dog and the dog bit me. There's so many, you could be playful with it. You could be educational. You could tell them what it is, or you could be like, it's none of your business and move on. It's
yeah,
totally up to you, whatever you feel comfortable with. Right.
mhm,
And so when my son was born, I, Cash, I had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And so when he was born, I really instilled at those young ages, not everybody looks the same. Their
yeah,
shape of their body, how they walk, how they talk will all look different. And like you will never tease another person for that.
yeah,
And that stuck with them. And so and sometimes I think like God knew like your advocacy was going to start with Cash because you needed to have that within your children, within your home for Mateo,
yeah.
you know?
And the advocacy
And
is big. It's big in the home. It's big if your
very,
own children don't understand, it's tough to expect the world to understand,
yes,
because you're going to want people to treat your child the same way his siblings treat him. You want that love and
it's very,
empathy, that understanding.
yeah, I want to share something with you. There was a family, this is before I had Mateo, and it was just my 3 kids with my prior husband, and we were at a restaurant eating. And the tables were fairly close to each other because it was around Christmas time. And there was a family there, and they had a child, well, kind of like a teenager, I would say, with cerebral palsy. And it was a boy, and he kept staring at our table, like smiling and trying to communicate. And so we just, started talking to him, like, "Oh, how's your dinner? Like, is it good? Like, you having a good time?" And then, like, my kids were talking to him, and like, it touched me so much. I'll get teary eyed again. I only cry when it comes to the kids, man.
Yeah.
It's like the kids get me. And the mom after dinner said, like, she cried and she said, "I just wanna tell you, no family has ever talked to my son like a normal person. Like,
Yeah.
he can't communicate with can't understand his words, but, like, you guys spoke to him as if he could. Your children engaged with my son," and, like, she's like, "I know my son was so happy, like, he was smiling and giggling, and I knew how much that meant for him, so the fact that, like, you guys did that and that stuck with me because a lot of people I think maybe are like, "Oh, I shouldn't try to talk to, someone that has disabilities that may not, communicate," but, like, they still want that human interaction,
Yes.
right? Like, presume competence, like, at all times. So, I like, that moment for me was, like, pivotal in my kids that I said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that that was gonna make like, touch her so bad that, like, she, cried." And so I told my kids, "See, this matters, guys." Like,
Mhm.
and moving forward, like, I just think all in all, collectively, we just, like we're like, we take extra effort to make other people feel seen and heard that may not have that opportunity with everybody else, you know?
Yes. It's a big thing. Even with Cole going to the playground, there are certain kids that will talk to him, and we're like, "Yeah, he might not talk back," and they'll still just
Yeah.
play. They'll just
Yeah,
play,
it's so
and those
cute.
are the moments where you're like, "Thank you," because he
Yes.
a lot of these kids will get to the age where if you're not talking back, you're not cool, they're just gonna take off and go, and it's important for
Mhm.
them to feel included, and it's awesome that you have those kids in your house too, you know?
Yes, exactly.
If you had one message to the world about autism and just parents in general that might be new to it, what's something that you've learned in your walks of life that you would like to share with people?
I think the biggest one would be, like I said, is presume competence. Just because they may not be able to communicate back to you doesn't mean that they don't understand or feel and have the same wants and like urges and needs that everyone else that is neurotypical does. To make them really feel included, right? To have that inclusion because a lot of these kids and people are talked about in front of them too. Like don't talk to your kid's therapist about everything they cannot do. Don't talk to other parents about what they cannot do, right? Because they're listening into that. They understand that. They may not be able to communicate that to you or reply in the way that you want them to. So you presume competence because they're taking that all in. And how hard would that be for a child, even an adult, right? Just anybody just to sit there and hear people talk about them all day about where they're at and where they're not at and what they
Yeah.
can and cannot do all the time. And so I try to be really mindful of that and like really only speaking up, right?
Yes.
And positivity. And yeah, I think that would be like the biggest takeaway is like try not to talk about your autistic person, whether it's your child, brother, sister, you know, aunt, uncle, friend, whoever, don't talk about them in front of them like they're not there.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
think that's like the biggest thing.
I couldn't agree more. Cole in the early days when he was more nonverbal, now he's minimally speaking, but when he was more nonverbal, it
Mhm.
is easy for people to say things in front of him as if he's not there because he's not going to talk. It's like, he still understands, right? He's not going to tell
Mhm.
you that you're an asshole, but I will
Ex
because he's
Yeah,
there, man.
exactly.
Like he's not, you act like he's not sitting
Yeah.
right there. And
Yeah.
luckily we've been surrounded by good people, and I'm kind of tough enough at that point where people won't really say anything
Mhm.
too harsh beyond criticisms, right? I do understand that people are going to have normal conversations, but there's a way to do it and there's a time to do it.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
in a very confusing world for a lot of these kiddos or adults even, as they're growing, um they already have their own challenges. They don't need to hear it from the people who are supposed to love them and protect them.
Exactly. And
So,
if you're constantly hearing, even at therapy appointments, even if you have a great therapist, I try to be so discreet when I talk about like what's happening. Like, oh, he's struggling right now. Like, I'll like, whisper in. Like, I don't want to say it out loud because if you're constantly hearing that, you're kind of like suppress that and like shut down, right? Like
Mhm.
that's how I would feel. Like if someone's constantly in my ear and like I have a boss, let's say that doesn't like me and they're just like, constantly talking about, what a crappy job I'm doing, in front of everyone else while I'm there. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I really am doing a crappy job. Then that's going to stick with me, right? I'm just going to be like, well, I'm probably not going to do
Yeah.
good at this job. I'm going to move on, find something else. This isn't for me. This is not gonna work. I suck at this. I'm gonna change my whole profession
Yeah.
because I suck at this. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so just be mindful.
Yeah. And that's just one person's perspective. And it's on us, the parents, to protect that, you
Yes.
know? So, but no,
Yeah.
KJ, I want to thank you for being on tonight. I appreciate it. It's
Well,
been
thank you.
great. It's been great hearing your story. I appreciate you sharing it and keep putting out good content. It really does help. That's one of the reasons why I reached out as well, because it's nice to have this platform to be able to talk to people such as yourself, but it's also, as a parent, I'm still learning. So to be able to get information
Absolutely.
from you, I can apply it to myself selfishly. So yeah, yeah,
Which I appreciate. Thank you. And that's something that I didn't expect, to hear is like, wow. And again, why I started is other people that were a couple steps ahead of me, a couple years into the diagnosis, not knowing some of the resources. I was just like, wow, okay, I'm still learning too. But as I learn, and I may not have everything, but I'll get you started, right? Like here's like a jump start. Like I just found out, like, you can do this X, Y, and Z. Like go figure it out. Go call your regional center or go look it up online or whatever, whatever we're talking about. I'm again only 8 months into this, and I'm not the expert by any means, but I'm the expert at my son, and I will advocate till the day I die
yes.
and help as many people as I can. So it's thank you for having me, and it was really nice speaking with you. And you're doing amazing things, talking to different people, walks of life. I've watched your
Yeah.
reels.
Thank
I
you.
need to listen in on some of your podcasts in full while I'm driving because it's pretty cool to hear everyone's story. And I think it's important. It's really awesome that you are having a mix of people, right? Different walks of life and different perspectives. And
Yep.
we tend to kind of just like birds of a feather flock together, but hearing other people's stories and, how it changed their life, we need to be inspired more. And that's the side of social media and the corner that I want to be on. I want to be
Yes.
on the happy, positive side, the real and the raw too. Don't get me wrong. It's not going to be rainbows and butterflies, but like, let's lift each other up.
Hmm.
When you talk about things, you feel connected. And I think like that's the part that social media is missing right now is the competitiveness versus the connection. And like, well, what you're doing is you're contributing to the good side, the connection.
Thank you. Thank you. I love hearing people's stories, and it's people that you take an interest to, people that you find interesting, people that you think are doing good work. And they're
Yes.
all different walks of life, whether I'm talking to a baseball player, a musician, a mom, a dad, whoever it is, people have a story to tell, and there's some positives behind it.
No, absolutely.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, KJ. I appreciate you. And we'll have to do this
Like,
again.
yeah, I would love to come back on. I have a lot to say,
Yeah.
obviously.
No, that is good. That is good. We need it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. We'll talk soon.